The area that is now Pearland had its humble beginnings near a siding switch on the Gulf, Colorado and Santa Fe Railway in 1882. The area was first called Mart Belt, so named for the superintendent of the Brazoria Land and Cattle Company, which operated out of St. Louis. The first post office was established in 1892 under the name of Mart Belt, and the postmaster was J.T. Lacey. In the 1890s, early settlers came mostly from Midwest states. Witold von Zielinski purchased 2,560 acres, which later became Pearland. Zielinski filed a plat of the town site on September 26, 1894. The original plat mapped the boundaries for Old Pearland as Orange Street on the north, Walnut Street on the south, Galveston Avenue on the east, and Austin Avenue on the west. Within a year, Zielinski was gone and never to be heard of again. When the Southern Homestead Company became the new owners of the Pearland town site, they advertised Pearland as a garden paradise throughout the Midwest. This plan was extremely successful. An influx of settlers came by rail and covered wagons to the garden paradise of Pearland, and by 1896, Pearland had 5 stores, a school, a church, and a newspaper, The Advocate, with pear and orange orchards scattered across the countryside. By the year of 1900, Pearland was a growing town of 460 people, and the center of the town was the newly built railroad station. It became the gathering spot for local residents since it was the only means of transportation into the areas surrounding Pearland, especially Houston. The old station, which now sits next to Pearland City Hall, is the oldest building in Pearland. The first school, which opened in 1894, had one room for 23 students. Early Pearland was plagued by many natural disasters, one of which was the infamous hurricane of 1900, which hit Galveston and the Gulf Coast and killed 8,000 of its residents. Fortunately, no one in the Pearland area died as a result of the storm. However, after the hurricane, the railroad gave free rides for people to go back to their point of origin, primarily the Midwest, dropping the school enrollment significantly. Until 1910, the population remained stagnant at around 400 people, following a low of 130 after the storm. For the next 10 years, Pearland was recovering from the effects of the storm. During this period, fig and orange orchards and dairy farming became the primary sources of income and carried Pearland back to prosperity. Figs were packed in 5-gallon cans and shipped by rail to all parts of the U.S. In 1912, with the town prospering, the citizens of Pearland voted a $6,000 bond issue to build a new 2-story brick school building on Grand Boulevard near what is now Zielinski Park. In 1915, there was an even stronger hurricane that devastated the town once more and destroyed the 2nd story of the new school. After the hurricane, the first floor was converted into an elementary school, and all the high schoolers were bused to Webster High School for the next 22 years. During the lull in the growth of Pearland, the fig packing industry continued to be the major employer and substantially contributed to the economy of Pearland. From 1920 to 1940, the population of Pearland remained fairly stable. According to the census, in 1930 there were 300 citizens, and in 1940 there were 360. When oil was discovered in 1934, Pearland entered a new era. This era marked a new beginning for Pearland with a thriving economy and a large influx of settlers. In 1937, a new Pearland High School was built on Grand Boulevard, and as it is today, football was a big deal to Pearland high schoolers and residents. After the 37th season, Pearland dropped football in 1938 because of a lack of players. However, Coach Hawkins had read about six-man football being popular in the Midwest and sold several area coaches on the idea of forming a six-man district. In 1939, Pearland began playing six-man football along with Friendswood, League City, Sweeney, Danbury, Lamar, Dickinson, and Santa Fe. Six-man football became very popular in the smaller Texas schools. In the fall of 1941, Pearland won the district and by-district championship, which was as far as six-man win at that time. After winning by-district, Pearland then played the undefeated private school, Kincaid, in a game the Houston newspapers billed as the six-man championship of Texas. The game was an afternoon game played at Kincaid's Field. After being tied 14-14 at halftime, Pearland won the game 42-14. And the next morning, the Pearland residents were delighted to read a big story in the Houston papers with many pictures of the game and the Pearland all-girls drum and bugle corps. The students of Pearland High School voted to call themselves the Oilers because of the oil boom at the time, and they chose the colors maroon and white because it was near the color of the crude oil being pumped in the oil fields. Also, they gave their yearbook the name The Gusher. In 1941, 132 Pearlanders fought in World War II, and it is estimated that 9 men lost their lives. By 1950, Pearland's population had grown to approximately 450 residents. Most of the area consisted of either dairy or rice farms, which thrived because of the newly built rice dryer. At this time, the Pearland School District only had 2 buses. One picked up all students on the east side of town, and the other all students on the west side. In 1960, Pearland became an incorporated city of 1,497 citizens. The boom continued in 1961 when the Johnson Space Center opened in the Webster area. With the building of the Space Center and the growth and expansion of Houston, Pearland began to rapidly grow. By 1970, the population had reached 6,444 citizens. With the opening of Beltway 8, and then somewhat later the opening of Highway 288 and the expansion of the Houston Medical Center, the west side of Pearland, west of Cullen, really began to boom with subdivisions springing up in areas which older Pearlanders recalled being rice fields or hay or dairy farms. By 1990, the population was 18,927. The 400 or so citizens who came to the new community of Pearland in the 1890s could have never envisioned their hometown becoming a metropolis of over 100,000 citizens. The Pearland schooling system has evolved from one wooden shack serving 100 students in 1894 to 24 schools, educating more than 20,000 children as of 2015, all around Pearland.